There are people who come into your life like a whisper, and without knowing how, they change the way you breathe. Others pass through you like storms, disrupting everything, and when they leave questions that seem impossible to answer. Why did this person come into my life? Why do I feel like I already knew them? Why, even with the pain, can't I walk away? If you've asked yourself these questions, this video is for you. Today, we're going to dive together into one of the deepest and most mysterious realms of the soul, destined love. But we won't approach it from empty romanticism or magical formulas circulating out there. We will approach it with the teachings of one of the most important psychologists in history, Carl Gustav Jung. We're going to explore how his vision of the unconscious, the soul, and archetypal connections can help you understand if the person occupying your mind is there by fate or by wound. Jung said that the people we attract are not by chance, but mirrors. They are living projections of what we have not yet recognized, integrated, or healed within ourselves. And when we understand this, love no longer becomes a desperate pursuit, but a journey of self-knowledge and deep growth. This video will transform you because we won't just talk about the other person. We'll talk about you, your bonds, the wounds you've carried from childhood, and how unknowingly you repeat them over and over in your relationships. We'll also talk about how these wounds can become portals to a more conscious, freer, and more authentic love. Throughout this content, we'll give you tools based on Jungian psychology that will allow you to know if the person who occupies your mind and soul is here to teach you a lesson or to stay. And we'll do it without cliches, without empty promises, only with truth, depth, and soul. I want you to know something. Destined love, from Jung's perspective, is not something you search for. It is something that reveals itself, but only if you are willing to look inward, because the soul does not fall in love with the other. It falls in love with what it finds of itself in the other. And that, dear viewer, could be the most beautiful illumination or the most painful confrontation. Perhaps you're watching this video because you can't let go of someone, because you feel there's an invisible thread connecting you beyond time, pain, or logic. Or maybe you're starting a relationship and wondering if this time is different, if this person is the right one, if there are signs confirming what you feel. This video will answer that from the depths of your psyche. Jung taught us that the collective unconscious holds symbols, images, impulses, and energies that transcend generations. Love often awakens not from reason, but from those ancestral territories where myths still vibrate. That's why true love doesn't always look as you expected. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it transforms, but it always calls you to be more of yourself. We are not here to give you a fairy tale. We are here to give you awareness, to invite you to look at your relationships with new eyes, to help you learn to recognize when a person is truly a gift from destiny and when they are a disguised repetition. Because not everything that glitters is love, and not everything that hurts is loss. We're going to talk about synchronicity, the concept Jung developed to explain why certain people appear in your life at exactly the right moment. We'll talk about projections, how often you don't fall in love with the real person, but with the image you built yourself. We'll show you how to dismantle that image to see the other person as they truly are. But we'll also talk about souls that truly meet, about bonds that don't need manipulation and obsession, because they are sustained by authenticity, truth, and respect. And you will learn to recognize them because there are clear, deep, and spiritual signs that will help you distinguish destined love from conditioned love. This video is not just for those in a relationship. It's for those who have loved, for those who have lost, for those who still don't understand why they can't forget. It's for those who want to stop repeating patterns, for those who want to love without losing themselves, for those who are ready to transform the way they connect. Here, we will touch on sensitive topics. We will ask you questions you may have never asked yourself, and some answers may make you uncomfortable, but that discomfort is part of the awakening process. And if you stay until the end, I assure you, you will see your relationships from a whole new level of awareness. Many psychologists avoid talking about destined love because they see it as too mystical or romantic an idea. But Jung didn't, because he understood that there are soul processes that can't be explained just with logic, that there are bonds that escape superficial analysis, and that when they are recognized, they open doors that forever change the way you love. Perhaps it wasn't the perfect moment to watch this video. Perhaps you stumbled upon it without looking for it. But if you're here, it's for a reason. And if you're here, it's because your soul brought you here. Because there is a part of you ready to understand love from a healthier, more real, and deeper place. And although the answer will not be a magic formula, it will be a compass. This video will be your emotional map. Because when we're done, you will know with clarity if this person is an opportunity for evolution or an illusion that keeps you trapped. And you will know, not because I told you, but because you will feel it in your body, your mind, your heart. You don't need to be a psychologist to understand what we're going to share. You need courage. Courage to look inward, to ask yourself real questions, to stop holding on to what hurts, to recognize what is, and let go of what only seems to be. We're going to talk about the anima and animus, the Jungian archetypes that live within you and condition your way of falling in love. You're going to discover how these energies influence your attraction, your expectations, and your breakups. And when you understand it, you will stop choosing from the wound and start choosing from awareness. If you've ever said to yourself, I feel like this person is destined for me, but I don't know how to prove it, this will give you the tools to answer from your inner truth, not from attachment. And if you've ever thought, why can't I forget them? Here you will understand if that's love or just an unresolved projection. You're not crazy for feeling what you feel. You're not broken for loving the one who hurt you. You're human, you're alive, and you're about to understand that love not only connects people, it also reveals shadows. And only those who face their shadow can love with light. This channel exists because we believe that psychological knowledge can save your life, help you let go, heal, and understand yourself. And if these words touch your soul, stay. Stay, because today could mark a new stage in your emotional journey. If this content is already resonating with you, I want you to prepare yourself because what's coming won't just be information. It will be a transformative, emotional experience, therapeutic in nature. You will hear words that you may have needed for years, and the best part is that they will be yours. This won't be just another video. It will be a before and after. Carl Jung affirmed that people meet when they have already met themselves. This powerful phrase is the heart of the content you are about to integrate into your life. Because the question many ask is this person for me? This can't be answered with logic, fear, or need. It can only be answered from the soul, from a consciousness that has dared to know itself deeply, even in its most uncomfortable shadows. For Jung, true love is a manifestation of individuation, that is, the process by which a person becomes themselves. That's why Jung spoke of love not as an external destiny that arrives suddenly, but as a natural consequence of an internal journey. There's no awakening of consciousness without pain, he said, and love, when it is authentic, inevitably awakens us, not with fantasies, but with truths. So how can you know if this person is for you? The first key from deep psychology is to ask yourself, does this relationship invite me to evolve, or does it leave me stuck? Jung taught that every meaningful encounter awakens an inner conflict because the soul wants to move. If this person awakens in you parts that you had forgotten, desires, wounds, callings, questions, you are facing an important mirror. It's no guarantee of permanence, but it is a guarantee of transformation. A common confusion is thinking that destined love is comfortable. Jung would say the opposite. Love that comes into your life with a real purpose deconstructs you, disorients you, confronts you with yourself, because it does not come to please you, it comes to reveal you. Jung wrote, "What you deny submits you, what you accept transforms you." In an authentic relationship, the other person often embodies exactly what you didn't want to see. Let's do an exercise. Close your eyes and think of that person. What emotions does this person awaken in you? What parts of you surface when you're with them? What memories from the past seem to activate now? Ask yourself honestly, am I seeing this person as they are or as I need them to be? Am I loving the other or am I using the other to fill voids that I'm afraid to face? Jung said that the meeting of two people is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's a reaction, both are transformed. If you remain exactly the same in the presence of that person, it's likely that you're not in love, but rather comfortable. True love is not about preservation. It's about expansion. It's fire. It's the movement of the soul. It's emotional alchemy. And if you're repeating patterns, attracting the same types of people with different faces, but the same essence, Jung would say that you're not loving, you're projecting. Projections are unconscious illusions that we place onto the other, and we often confuse those projections with signs of destiny. But they are not. They are wounds seeking an outlet. Jung warned, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Are you willing to look at your darkness with love? Are you willing to stop chasing a love that saves you to become the one who rescues yourself? Because destined love doesn't come when you're needy. It comes when you're prepared. It comes when you no longer need it, because your soul no longer demands it. It recognizes it. Let's do another introspective practice. Write down on a sheet of paper what you were looking for when this person appeared. Be brutally honest. Were you looking for security, validation, companionship, admiration, or were you at peace with yourself, and someone simply appeared who resonated with you in that calm? Jung said that the soul moves through symbols, and the people who come into our lives are also symbols. What does this person symbolize for you? Not everything you feel is love. Sometimes it's attachment, shared trauma, or a deep need not to be alone. And this is where Jung asks us to do the work of inner separation, distinguishing between the soul that expands and the ego that clings. The destined love does not have the urgency of attachment. It has the calmness of what flows without pressure. One of Jung's most powerful concepts is that of the anima and animus, the internal figures of the masculine and feminine that live within each of us. When we project the anima or animus, we feel that it is the love of our life, when in reality we are in love with an unintegrated internal image. This is why Jung said that falling in love is nothing more than the projection of your unconscious onto another person. So how do you know if that person is real for you or if they are just a projection? Observe if you can see them with their flaws without losing respect for them. Observe if, when they do not behave as you expect, your world falls apart, or if you can still love them from understanding. Destined love is not based on the perfection of the other, but on the deep acceptance of their humanity. Let's talk about synchronicity. Jung coined this term to describe those exact, striking coincidences that seem to have a hidden meaning. If that person appeared at the exact moment when something inside you was shifting, don't ignore it. Synchronicity is the language of the soul. But be careful. Just because there's a sign doesn't mean there's a shared destiny. Sometimes it's just a message for you. And here comes the most important thing. Jung would never say that true love is perfect. He would say it is complete, that it integrates, that it doesn't avoid pain, but gives you the tools to go through it with awareness, that it doesn't promise forever, but it does promise transformation forever. Destined love, according to Jung, is the one that helps you become who you came to be. Another exercise: write down the 3 things that hurt you the most about this person. Then, write next to them 3 parts of yourself that you could strengthen to not depend on those wounds. You will see that what hurts is not just what the other person does, but what you have stopped giving to yourself. Jung taught that everything we seek outside is a call to complete ourselves on the inside. Remember that what you need most to find is found where you least want to look, and that applies to love. Sometimes we think someone is our soulmate just because they activate an intense emotion. But intensity is not always connection. Sometimes it is trauma activation. And if you don't make this difference conscious, you will repeat the same cycle with a different face. A destined relationship is not the one where everything flows magically. It is the one where both are willing to look at each other, correct each other, support each other, and grow. It is a relationship where there is freedom, not dependency. Where there is truth, not theater. Where there is process, not possession. Throughout this video, we are not giving you formulas, but paths. Because we don't want you to cling to a romantic idea, but to embrace an emotional truth. And that truth is that you won't know if someone is for you until you are for yourself, until you support yourself, until you choose yourself. If right now you are clinging to someone who doesn't choose you, ask yourself, is it love or is it the fear of being alone? Why do I want this person to confirm what I am not sure I have within myself? Because sometimes we think that destined love is the one who saves us, but true destined love doesn't save us. It accompanies us. You won't always know it in the moment. Jung said, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So if you're not sure right now, don't punish yourself. Observe, listen, learn. The soul speaks in silence, not in anxiety. To close this part, I want to leave you with a challenge. For 1 week, every time you think of this person, don't ask yourself, will they love me? Ask yourself, am I growing with this experience? Because in that answer is all the truth you need. And if this video has deeply touched you, I invite you to leave the phrase, "True love transforms me, it does not destroy me," in the comments. Leave it as a symbol that you are ready to love with awareness, to stop needing, to begin choosing. There is a teaching that Coram left us and that we should never forget when talking about love. The main function of a relationship is to help us develop our inner wholeness. This statement completely changes the perspective. It's not about finding someone who fits perfectly with you. It's about finding someone who helps you see yourself completely, even in the parts you'd rather hide. When Jung spoke of the soul, he did not do so from religious spirituality, but from psychological depth. For him, the psyche had its own wisdom, its own intention, an evolutionary direction. And when the soul feels the need to grow, it will attract exactly the people who will accelerate that growth. This is why destined love is not the one that avoids conflict. It is the one that confronts you with the part of you that has not yet integrated. If you find yourself in a relationship where you are being pushed to heal old wounds, to understand your emotions, to rethink your patterns, it is likely that you are facing a deeply meaningful connection. It may be destined love, but not because of what the other represents, but because of what you are called to awaken in that mirror. Jung did not believe in emotional chance. He affirmed that when something emotionally powerful happens, whether it is the beginning of love or a devastating breakup, it has a deep root in the unconscious. What comes to you comes to show you something, and if you don't learn the lesson, life will repeat it. The names, faces, and stories will change, but the essence will remain the same. Here is where we can delicately include Freud. Although Jung distanced himself philosophically from him, they both agreed on one fundamental truth. Our love connections are deeply linked to our childhood. If you had a critical absent figure or an unconditionally accommodating one, it is likely that you unconsciously seek that in your adult relationships. But Jung went beyond that. He didn't just talk about childhood imprints. He talked about the self as the wholeness we long to reach. And destined love is not just a repetition of past lacks. It is also a beacon guiding us toward that wholeness. The problem is that many people get stuck in projections and never reach that point of integration. Jung insisted, loneliness does not come from not having someone close, but from not being able to communicate the things that seem important. This is one of the most powerful gauges to know if someone is for you. Can I communicate my inner world in this relationship? Can I be seen, not just in my light side, but also in my shadow? And speaking of shadow, Jung offered us one of the most liberating concepts in psychology. The shadow is not just the bad, it is the repressed. What parts of you are activated in this relationship that you normally hide? Do you become more jealous, more submissive, more dependent? Then that person didn't just come to love you, they came to show you which part of you still needs attention. From this perspective, the destined love is not a story that feels perfect. It's a story that forces you to ask yourself, who am I when I am with this person? Am I growing? Am I being more myself? Or am I shrinking to fit in? Here we can also mention Viktor Frankl, who reminded us that love is the only way to truly capture another human being in the deepest parts of their personality. When that connection exists, you don't seek to change the other, but to understand them. When you are with a partner who doesn't try to mold you, but to see you, you might be in a real relationship. But be careful. Jung also warned about the danger of holding on to a relationship just because it's intense. Not everything intense is authentic. Some people come with such strong emotional fire that it seems like love, but it's only the shadow crying out. And if you don't know yourself, you'll get lost in that intensity, thinking that it's destiny. Erich Fromm said that immature love says, I love you because I need you. Mature love says, I need you because I love you. Jung also held this, but from the perspective of individuation. True love is born when two complete people meet, not to merge, but to walk together. If you need the other to feel like someone, you are not loving, you are depending. The best way to know if someone is for you is to answer this question. Am I a better person when I'm with this person, even when we argue? Because the soul does not seek a perfect partner. It seeks a real bond capable of holding the truth, even the most painful one. He also spoke about the myth of archetypes, the symbols that activate the soul. The love that feels like it's from another life is often loaded with unconscious meanings. Don't underestimate it, but don't idealize it either. Sometimes a karmic connection comes just to teach you to let go, not to stay. So how can you distinguish between real love and a romantic projection? The projection is fragile. It crumbles when the other doesn't meet your expectations. Real love, on the other hand, adapts, transforms, and doesn't demand perfection. It only requires presence. When Carrion said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, he was also talking about love. Because there is no relationship that does not confront you with your limits, your traumas, and your shortcomings. The destined love does not exempt you from personal work. It demands it even more strongly. Do this exercise. Write down 3 painful moments from your current or past relationship. Then write what parts of you were reflected in that pain. Was there abandonment, control, devaluation? There are your mirrors, there are your answers, there begins your awakening. Another essential clue: when a person is for you, they don't ask you to stop being yourself. They invite you to be more of yourself. They applaud you when you shine, confront you when you dim, and hold you when you are rebuilding. If you have to dim your light to hold a relationship, that relationship is not for you. Jung insisted that the soul does not seek comfort, it seeks evolution. And when you attract someone with whom you can grow, with whom you can be vulnerable and strong at the same time, with whom you can touch your wounds without fear, you are close to destined love. Now ask yourself sincerely, does this person help me connect with my deepest vocation? Do I feel I can talk to them about my fears, my dreams, my contradictions? Or do I only talk about the superficial, the day-to-day, the things that don't make me uncomfortable? Because a relationship is not defined just by how well you get along, but by how deep you can go without destroying each other. Destined love may fight, may argue, may doubt, but it never forgets to build, never stops talking, never disappears without reason. And if right now you are in a bond that consumes you more than it nourishes you, Jung would tell you that there is no soul there, only shadow. Don't blame yourself for choosing it, but be responsible if you decide to stay. Consciousness always begins when you stop justifying your suffering. In the end, the love that is for you does not need to disguise itself, does not need games, does not need to convince you. It only needs an open heart, a waking mind, and a firm will to build something real. Some relationships come as mirrors, others as teachers, but the ones that really matter from a Jungian perspective are the ones that allow us to look at ourselves with brutal sincerity, without disguising the wound or covering up the truth. Jung would not tell you to run toward the love that makes you feel good all the time. He would tell you to observe carefully the one that makes you feel alive in a new way, even if it hurts. It's not about idealizing the one who confronts you, but recognizing if that confrontation comes from respect or from power. Jung spoke of individuation as the process by which the soul separates from social conditioning to become whole. The destined love does not interrupt that process. It accompanies it, respects it, even accelerates it. A powerful sign that is often overlooked is the ability that person has to help you return to yourself when you've gotten lost. If someone can remind you who you are in your most confused moments, if their presence doesn't take you away from yourself but brings you back, you are facing a relationship with deep meaning. There are bonds that consume us because they awaken our most primitive, anxious, and dependent parts. Jung said that if you don't make your unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it destiny. Sometimes we think someone is our destiny, but it's just an old wound with a new face. A practice you can do is write down the most authentic moments you've lived with that person. Not the most romantic ones, but the most real ones. Those where you showed a part of yourself without embellishments. Then ask yourself, did that person accept me there, or did they distance themselves? Because true love starts when you can no longer pretend. Jung invites us to observe the symbolic quality of our bonds. Everything that happens to you in a relationship has both a psychological dimension and an archetypal one. Does that person represent to you a mother, a father, a savior? Or do you truly see them as a human being with virtues and flaws? The more archetypal your vision of the other is, the more your love will be projected. In clinical practice, many patients believe that if something feels intensely, it must be true. But intensity can also be the most unconscious. I didn't understand this, which is why I taught that love must be traversed by consciousness, not to extinguish it, but to purify it. Emotional pain, when not understood, recycles. You keep searching for what hurts you because you still don't know why you need it. And it is at this point where deep psychology becomes essential. Only when you understand the root can you heal the repetition. The relationship that is meant for you doesn't ask you to give up your essence. It asks you to refine it, to strengthen it, to recognize it. If someone makes you feel that you must become someone else to be loved, that bond is more based on lack than on destiny. A great truth that Jung left written is this: the encounter with oneself first means the encounter with one's own shadow. If the love you're living leads you to these types of internal encounters, don't despise it because of the pain it involves. Sometimes that is exactly what your soul needs to evolve. When you talk with that person, you can express yourself from the wound without fear of being judged. They listen to you even if they don't fully understand you. You can bare your mind without feeling small, because the love that is meant for you is not built from emotional competition, but from mutual trust. The soul has a rhythm that doesn't always match our expectations. Sometimes that love comes before you are ready or after you've already given up, but it's never by chance. Jung firmly believed that the symbols of the soul have their own time. That's why you should not rush, not push. Just observe what moves inside you when the other appears. Not everything that feels like love is love. There are attractions based on shared pain, resonant trauma, the need to fill emptiness, but destined love is different. It doesn't seek to complete you. It recognizes that you are already complete, and from there, it chooses to walk with you. A revealing key is this: the love that is meant for you doesn't fight against you. It may challenge you, yes, it may confront you, but it doesn't drag you to places where you lose yourself. If every time you love, you end up more confused than before, perhaps you're calling love what is actually emotional disorder. Remember this: destined love doesn't depend on the amount of time spent together, but on the depth of the connection. There are people who heal in 3 weeks what others have destroyed in 5 years. Don't cling to time. Cling to the emotional truth that resides in that connection. From a Jungian perspective, love is a door to the self. If a relationship doesn't bring you closer to your truth, it's probably not the path. Destiny is not what chooses you without your will. Destiny is what you build when you listen to your soul. Jung also spoke of the alchemy of the soul, and in love, this translates as, if both are willing to transform, to die symbolically in order to be reborn as more whole versions of themselves, then that love has value. If only one transforms and the other resists, the balance breaks. Having chemistry is not enough. Having projects is not enough. What is essential is having inner direction. The love that is meant for you doesn't just walk beside you. It walks with you toward the same horizon, even if each one takes their own step. And that horizon is always authenticity. You can be vulnerable with that person without fear of judgment. You can cry in front of them without feeling shame. You can share your contradictions without that becoming a weapon they later use against you. Destined love doesn't keep ammunition, it keeps space. The construction of authentic love requires courage. It requires that you look at yourself, that you review yourself, that you make uncomfortable decisions. And when the soul feels ready for it, it calls for its equal. Destined love is between equals, not in power, not in achievements, but in commitment to the soul. Jung never promised that love heals everything, but he made it clear that love can reveal everything that needs to be healed. And in that revelation is the greatest gift, even if it hurts, even if it disrupts, even if it doesn't fit into your plans. When you're with someone and your anxiety decreases, your clarity increases, and your energy flows, there is a powerful sign. It's not the euphoric emotion that defines true love, it's the deep peace, that feeling of inner home. If that bond pushes you to do therapy, to read, to grow, to ask yourself new questions, don't ignore it. That person, even if they don't stay, came to open a door. And when someone opens an internal door for you, you can never close it again without feeling that something in you is betrayed. The love that is meant for you doesn't demand constant explanations. It explains itself with presence. It explains itself with truth. It explains itself with care. If you are constantly being made to doubt your worth, it's not love, it's a wound that asks to be recognized. The desire for someone to be the one doesn't make them the right person for you. The mind desires, but the soul recognizes. And when the soul recognizes, there is no anxiety, there is silent certainty. I would not remember that no one can be for you if you are not being for yourself. The first act of true love is not towards another, it is towards yourself. It's telling yourself, I choose me. And from there, being with someone is no longer a need, it's a gift. There are encounters that don't have to last a lifetime to be eternal. Just one gesture, one look, one conversation is enough for your soul to understand that there was something real. Destined love is not always meant to stay, but it is always meant to mark you, to remind you who you are. You are not broken for having loved someone who didn't reciprocate. You are awake for having felt. You are growing for having gone through the grief. True love doesn't weaken you, it reveals what was already ready to heal. And that is the purest essence of Jungian love. To love is to know oneself. When Jung spoke about love, he didn't describe it as a static romantic story, but as an evolutionary confrontation. The love that is meant for you is not just the one that makes you feel, but the one that forces you to meet your most uncomfortable questions. Ask yourself, what part of me was activated since I met this person? Is it my soul responding, or is it my need? Jung defined the self as that totality to which every human being must aspire. And true love is not a distraction from that path, it's a catalyst. If that relationship is helping you integrate your forgotten parts, your fears, your desires, even your contradictions, perhaps you are not facing an emotional problem, but a purpose. Don't confuse intensity with truth. Jung was very clear. The unconscious projects itself with overwhelming force. The soul screams through the other what you don't want to hear from yourself. That's why sometimes love doesn't feel soft or fluid. Sometimes it feels like a shock. But if that shock pushes you towards yourself, don't reject it immediately. Pause. Breathe. Think about that person who still lives in your mind. Do you feel you can evolve spiritually with them? Do you feel there's freedom, even if there are challenges? Do you feel you don't have to constantly explain your existence? If the answer is yes, even with doubts, then you are facing something valuable, not perfect, but profoundly real. A simple but powerful practice. Write 3 words that define what you feel when you're with that person. Then ask yourself, do those 3 words also reflect what I feel when I'm with myself? Because when the other is for you, it resonates with your being, not your lack. Jung would say that the love that is for you doesn't come from obsession, but from recognition. You don't chase it, you see it, you intuit it, you realize that there's something in their presence that reflects you more clearly. And when that happens, there's no mental noise. There's emotional clarity. Another Jungian sign of destined love. You feel accepted, even in the areas of yourself that are still in process. You don't need to disguise yourself. You don't need to promise to be someone you're not yet. You're simply there, and that authenticity is enough to sustain the connection. Remember this phrase by Jung. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you really are. If that person gives you space to become your deepest, freest, most awakened version, that's soul love, not ego love. That's a meaningful relationship, not a needy one. Now, I want to invite you to interact. If this part of the video has resonated with you, if you feel it has helped you see things differently, leave the phrase, "I don't chase love, I become it," in the comments. Write it strongly. Let it be your declaration of emotional independence. And most importantly, remember that the love that is for you will never be the one that makes you lose yourself. It will be the one that, even in chaos, reminds you with tenderness of who you are. Because as Jung said, he who looks outside dreams, but he who looks inside awakens. There's a lot of talk about love as if it were an external goal, as if the purpose were to find someone else. But Corion was clear in warning us that the real work begins when we understand that each bond is a path to self-knowledge. Love is not a goal to reach. It's an experience that reveals you, and it does so because, unknowingly, every encounter is an appointment with your own shadow, your wound, your need for completeness. From Jung's perspective, the human being doesn't look for a partner randomly. They look for someone who unconsciously helps them finish a process that was left suspended in childhood. What was missing, what hurt, what was repressed, is projected in the form of attraction. And this explains why we often love those who are not good for us. Because our psyche doesn't seek comfort, it seeks evolution. Love then becomes a process of alchemy. As Jung said, everything that is not made conscious is manifested as fate. And many people believe they are being attracted by destiny, when in reality they are being directed by their unintegrated unconscious. That's why it's important to wake up, to observe yourself, to question what you feel and where you feel it. Viktor Frankl, for his part, said that love is the only way to capture the essential core of another human being. This idea complements Jung's when we remember that only those who have made contact with their own essence can truly see the essence of another. So it's not just about feeling love, but about having the inner depth to sustain it. There are people who are not ready to love, not because they don't feel, but because they haven't looked at themselves enough yet. And as Karen Horney said, many times what we call love is nothing more than a desperate need to cling to someone who avoids the internal void. When this happens, the relationship becomes dependence, disguised as shared anxiety. Jung taught that love can be an initiatory process. Not all relationships are made to last, But all relationships are made to teach you. Even those that hurt, even those that break. Especially those, because they are the ones that show you the parts of yourself that still need light. If you're in a relationship that doesn't allow you to grow, that doesn't let you breathe, that forces you to be silent or pretend, you are not on a path of individuation. You're in an emotional cage, and destined love, if anything, guarantees freedom. Freedom to be, to speak, to expand. John Beebe, creator of the attachment theory, demonstrated that our childhood experiences determine the way we connect. But Jung went a step further. He would say that, even if that's true, we also have the power to deprogram ourselves, to break patterns, to heal the narrative, and that true love arises when you stop loving from your lack and start loving from your consciousness. Let's think about this. If every time you love, you end up losing yourself, if you give up your value, your identity, your direction, then that relationship is not love. It's emotional exile. And as Fromm rightly said, love is not fusion. It is union with the preservation of individuality. If you lose yourself, you are not loving. You are disappearing. When Jung spoke of the animus and the anima, he didn't refer to mere masculine or feminine energy, but to the internal principles of creation, action, reflection, and connection with the soul. When we don't integrate those parts within us, we seek the other to represent them, and then we confuse desire with destiny. But destined love is not an external lack. It is an internal resonance. Sometimes we wonder why we feel so trapped in a relationship. And Jung would answer, because we haven't made conscious what that relationship came to show us. The soul doesn't release what hasn't been understood. It doesn't let go of what it hasn't decoded yet. Only when you truly understand what that person came to activate in you can you let go without guilt. Some bonds don't come to stay, but to awaken you. Jung would say it's your task to discern. Not everything that feels deep is meant to last. Some relationships are like internal earthquakes. They move everything, they shake everything, and then they disappear. But the real work is not in holding on to the other person, but in staying whole yourself after the tremor. Erich Fromm talked about the art of loving and said that love is a decision, a commitment, a constant practice. I would confirm by saying that conscious love requires emotional discipline and that it is not enough to just indulge. You must know how to sustain because the soul can recognize, but only a healed psyche can sustain that recognition. Jung also spoke about the process of individuation as the purest form of personal evolution, and in a real relationship, that individuation does not stop. If you are in a bond where one person has to stop being who they are for it to work, there is no love, only emotional manipulation, because destined love never demands that you shrink. In Jung's words, true love is not the one that avoids your shadow. It is the one that accompanies you to see it. It is not the one that idealizes you. It is the one that sees you whole even when you are broken. And still, it stays. That is the love that transforms. Not because it solves everything, but because it teaches you to solve from a new place. Imagine for a moment that everything you've lived through until now had a reason, that every person who passed through your life left a clue, a sign, a symbol. Jung would believe it. He would say that every encounter is archetypal, that you are not experiencing things without meaning. You are going through the myths of your soul. When a relationship touches the soul, time distorts. It can last days or decades, but what matters is the depth of the impact. If someone has shaken your internal system, forced you to reevaluate your life, your wounds, your decisions, don't underestimate it. It may not be your happy ending, but it was certainly your breaking point. The love that heals is not the one that always smiles. It is the one that tells you the truth, even if it hurts. It is the one that does not run away when you disarm yourself. It is the one that, even in chaos, holds your gaze and says, I am here, not to save you, but to accompany you. That is the presence the soul yearns for, not saviors, companions. Jung never promised easy paths, he promised true ones. And in love, That means you will not find certainties from day one. But if you learn to look with the eyes of the soul, if you learn to feel beyond your wounds, you will know when a bond is authentic. Because it makes you free, even when you are accompanied. When someone awakens in you parts you didn't know you had, it doesn't always mean your other half has arrived, but that a version of yourself that was waiting to be seen has arrived. Destined love is not a compliment that completes you. It is a trigger that reveals you. And Jung was very clear about this. Don't seek outside what can only be built within. If there is a relationship that is showing you all that hurts, all that was denied, all that you avoided looking at, don't run away from it too quickly. Stop. Observe yourself. Because maybe that person didn't come to stay, but they did come to teach you something you would have never learned on your own. It is not a soulmate you seek. It is a lesson of truth. Loving from the soul is choosing someone with open eyes. It is seeing their wounds, their lights, and their darkness, and still choosing to walk together, not as saviors, but as witnesses. Jung would say that mature love is not the one that promises eternity, but the one that commits to sincere presence. Sometimes we confuse love with emotional intensity, but intensity can also be an addiction to chaos. Jung and other psychologists like Karen Horney teach us that the soul seeks order when it has already lived too much disorder. So when someone appears who gives you peace instead of vertigo, don't think they're boring. Maybe that's your sign. Many bonds fail because one of the two is still seeking childish validation. They are not looking for a partner. They are looking for a father or mother figure. And that burden cannot be sustained from love, only from therapy, from awareness, from healing. I knew it. No one can love freely if they are still tied to unresolved trauma. True love does not make you forget about yourself. It makes you return to yourself with more strength. If that person dims you, if they demand that you betray yourself, if they take you away from your purpose, that is not destined love. It is attachment, it is wound, it is unconscious repetition. And here the work is not to recover the other person, but to recover yourself. One of the greatest mistakes we make is seeking relationships that distract us from the inner void. But as Jung said, everything we repress ends up dominating us. If you are not at peace with your loneliness, love will be an escape. And every escape, no matter how beautiful it seems, ends up being a prison. Mature love recognizes that the other did not come to fill your gaps, but to accompany you while you fill them yourself. It is a love that does not demand perfection, but presence, that does not ask for absurd sacrifices, but authenticity. And that, although it seems simple, is one of the greatest emotional challenges that exist. When you feel that the other person takes more energy from you than they give, stop. The soul always warns. Always. But only those who are awake can hear it. What does your body say when you are with that person? How do you breathe? How do you sleep? Because the body does not know how to lie, and love that is for you does not drain. It renews. Not everything that shines is love. Sometimes it is dependency well disguised. It is a void that is filled with nice gestures but without emotional depth. Jung spoke about the false self, that mask we all use to survive. And many relationships are nothing more than two masks interacting. Real love begins when you dare to take it off. If looking back you feel that you always chose from the fear of abandonment, maybe you never chose freely. And that is not your fault. It is your wound. But once you see it, you can no longer keep loving the same way. The next love you choose must come from your truth, not from your lack, from your awakening, not from your survival. The soul does not want perfect love. It wants the love that stays when you are not perfect, that holds your doubts without demanding that you have all the answers. It respects your process without rushing you. Because, as Jung said, love does not cure, but it can be the most fertile ground for you to heal yourself. If someone loves you only when you smile, when you are strong, when you are useful, that is not love. It is emotional convenience. True love does not measure you by your functionality. It embraces you even when you are broken, It sees you even when you are dark, because it understands that that shadow is part of the journey. There is a moment in every process of individuation when you realize that no one can love you the way you are not loving yourself. And right there, a new stage begins. A stage where you no longer settle, where you no longer give half of yourself, where you no longer accept emotional crumbs. Jung reminded us that dreams and relationships have hidden symbols. If you are in a relationship that feels inexplicable, that feels as if something higher has woven it, observe what part of you awakens in that bond. Maybe you don't understand it with your mind, but your soul already understood everything. Sometimes the love that leaves the deepest mark is not the one that kisses you the most, but the one that reflects you the most, the one that shows you what you didn't know you were capable of feeling, the one that leaves you questions, silences, cracks, but also paths towards yourself. Don't measure it only by its duration. Measure it by its transformation. When he spoke of integration, he was referring to bringing together all parts of you: light, shadow, tenderness, anger, desire, fear. The love that is for you doesn't just stay with what it likes. It accepts your totality. It doesn't flee when you contradict yourself. It doesn't disappear when you're not at your best version. Not all the people who teach you something are meant to stay. Some come only as guides, as awakeners. And it's an act of true love to know when to let them go, when their presence is no longer evolution, but repetition. Because loving also means letting go, and sometimes letting go is the greatest act of respect. Don't seek for love to be a constant emotion. Seek for it to be a constant growth. Passion fades away, but admiration, trust, and genuine connection, these are the roots of a love that lasts. A love the soul recognizes without needing explanation. Remember this: the love that is for you doesn't demand proof from you, doesn't ask you to sacrifice yourself in exchange for attention. It doesn't play with your time, your silence, or your mental health. The love that is for you is clear, honest, kind. It's firm without being harsh, deep without being dramatic. Some relationships are born so you learn to set boundaries, others so you learn to open up, and some so you learn not to give up on yourself. Every bond has a purpose, but only you can decide if you are willing to evolve with it or keep running from yourself. When you love again, do it from presence, not from urgency. Do it from your soul, not from need. And before you say, "This person is for me," make sure that you're all ready for yourself, that you inhabit yourself, that you choose yourself, that you respect yourself, because the most faithful love starts at home. If this video is helping you see with new eyes, if you feel something shifting inside you, don't let it pass by. Leave in the comments the phrase, "I am learning to love from my consciousness." Write it for yourself, not for others. Write it as an act of internal affirmation. Remember, what you're feeling is not weakness. It's awakening. It's expanding consciousness. It's your soul asking you not to keep choosing the same, expecting different results. Because life doesn't change when someone arrives. It changes when you decide to see and value yourself as you deserve. And when that happens, when you no longer choose from fear, but from worthiness, then yes, you're ready to receive a destined love. A love that doesn't break you. A love that doesn't limit you. A love that, with all its imperfections, accompanies you to be who you came here to be. You are not here by chance. You didn't get to this point in the video simply because you wanted to entertain yourself. You've arrived because your soul asked for answers, because something inside you can no longer bear repeating the same cycles, because you're tired of calling love what was only empty disguised. And if you stay with us until the end, this won't just be another video. It will be an emotional turning point in your personal story. Remember this with all the strength of your heart. You are not less valuable for having loved someone who didn't choose you. You're not broken for having given too much. You're not lost for not having seen it before. You are alive. You are feeling. You are learning. And in this numbed society, that's already a form of courage. What you're going through now is not a breakup. It's a rebirth. And even though it hurts, even though you don't fully understand it. Trust. The pieces that seem like chaos today will be clarity tomorrow. I used to say, no one gets enlightened by fantasizing about figures of light, but by making their darkness conscious. Today, you're touching that darkness, and that's why you're closer than ever to the light. Perhaps no one taught you to love yourself. Maybe you grew up believing that you had to do something special to deserve love. But I tell you with full certainty, you don't have to do anything. You only need to remember who you are. Only return to yourself. Only stop giving yourself to those who don't know how to hold you, because your worth is not in someone else's hands. It's in your awakened consciousness. True love doesn't come when you're begging for it. It comes when you stop betraying yourself for fear of losing. When you start choosing yourself, even if that means being alone for a while. Because the solitude that comes from self-love is 1,000 times more dignified than the company that requires you to disappear to exist. This is the moment when you stop chasing external signs and start listening to your inner truth. The whisper that's been telling you for a while that you deserve more, that you weren't born to beg for emotional crumbs, that you are your best choice, and whoever wants to walk by your side will have to deserve it. And if today you feel a knot in your chest, a desire to cry, a mix of sadness and relief, don't stop it. You're freeing yourself. You're letting go of old beliefs. You're rewriting your story. Because you no longer want love that hurts. You want love that heals, and that starts with you. Let this community be your refuge. Share in the comments how you feel, what phrase touched you, what you're living, and if this message truly reached your soul. Write in the comments, I am ready for a love that finds me without having to lose myself. This is your sign. It's your mantra. It's your rebirth. You've heard many theories, many ideas, many concepts, but now we want you to feel it. We want you to see it with your own eyes. That's why the most awaited moment of the video has arrived, the story. A story where you will see your emotions, your decisions, your shadows, and also your light reflected. Stay, breathe, because what you're about to hear is not just a narration, it's a mirror. It's an experience that could be yours. Maybe in the middle of its streets, its tears, and its awakening, you'll discover that you too are ready, that you too can live a destined love without having to betray your soul. The city awoke with a light drizzle that soaked the windows of the cafés and the old apartment windows in Chapinero Alto in Bogotá. Andres walked down Carrera Septima with his hands in his pockets, his scarf barely holding the cold to his chest. He had been weeks without understanding himself, repeating a question that had been haunting him ever since she left. How do you know if someone is really for you? Lucia had appeared like lightning. She wasn't the type of woman he usually looked for, and perhaps that's why she disarmed him so quickly. She had a soft voice, but a direct gaze, and a strange questions he had never dared to ask himself. He met her at a psychology conference at the Javeriana University, where he had gone more out of inertia than interest. Since then, his world began to spin differently. The first days were dizzying. Spontaneous outings to bookstores in the center, conversations until 3 a.m. about the soul, dreams, wounds. She spoke to him about Jung with a clarity that seemed almost mystical to him. You think you're getting to know me, she told him one night, but what you're seeing of me is your own projection. That phrase shook him, and at the same time, it made him fall in love. But with the same speed with which it arrived, something began to break. Andres felt increasingly anxious, smaller, more dependent. Every time Lucia pulled away a little, he felt like he was falling apart inside. He couldn't understand how he could be so attracted to someone who, without causing him any harm, made him feel so vulnerable. One Sunday night, after she canceled a date without much explanation, Andres locked himself in his apartment on 59th Street and reread the book she had lent him, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, by Carl Jung. He underlined a line he had previously overlooked. What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you. For the first time, he understood that his pain wasn't because of her, It was because of what she activated in him. Lucia wasn't his storm. She was his mirror. That night, Andres couldn't sleep. He stayed staring at his reflection in the window, fogged by the steam from the rain. He thought about his childhood, the emotional absence of his mother, how he had always felt he had to do something extraordinary for someone to stay. "I'm looking for love as if it's something I have to earn, not something I deserve," he wrote in his notebook. He decided that the next day he wouldn't call her, not out of pride, but because for the first time he needed to be with himself. He went for a walk down Circunvalación Avenue and stopped in front of the national park. He breathed deeply, and while cars sped behind him, he felt something inside he had never felt before: stillness. The days passed, and there were no messages from either of them. At first, it hurt. Then, it became a sort of ritual. Andres started therapy. He brought his journals, talked about his dreams. He dreamed of trains, endless elevators, doors opening to unknown landscapes. His therapist, a serene-looking man named Manuel, explained that his unconscious was speaking to him, that he was ready to meet himself. One afternoon, Andres ran into Lucia again by accident. It was in a bookstore downtown, one they both used to visit. She was flipping through a poetry book, and when she saw him, she smiled with tenderness. He looked at her differently, not as a beggar for affection, but as an equal. She asked him how he was. He replied, "Learning to know myself. I've just begun." They talked for a few minutes. There was no drama, no questions about why they had disappeared. There was only presence and a quiet, almost sacred goodbye. Andres didn't feel empty. He felt gratitude because he understood that not all loves come to stay. Some come to return us to ourselves. Over time, he began to write. He anonymously published his reflections on the soul, relationships, and the unconscious on a blog. People began to read it, to resonate with his transformed pain. And that's when he understood another lesson from Jung. When you integrate your shadow, you become medicine for others. One morning, while going through his old notebooks, he found Lucia's phrase written in blue ink. "What you see in me is what you don't want to see in yourself." He smiled, because now he understood. Because now, when he looked at someone else, he no longer did it from a place of lack, but from an encounter with his own self. And so, without having seen her again, without needing closure, without perfect endings, Andres knew that Lucia had been an archetypal figure on his journey, the representation of his anima, his inner feminine. It wasn't a conventional love story. It was a story of evolution, a Jungian story. He no longer walked through the city looking for faces that reminded him of her. He walked recognizing in every corner a different part of himself. Bogotá no longer seemed cold to him. It seemed symbolic. Every street, every cafe, every cloud over Monserrato, everything was a symbol. Everything was part of his journey. As the months passed, someone else appeared. Someone different. His story with her wasn't epic or magical. It was serene, authentic, clear, and that's why it was real. Because as Jung said, love is not the emotion of being possessed by someone. It's the space where both can become free. And Andres learned that not when he found that new person, but when he dared to lose the one he thought was his destiny. Because the real destiny, he understood, was never her. It was always him, returning to himself. Andres' story is not just an intimate tale about love and loss. It is, at its essence, an X-ray of the soul that has been confronted by a real connection, a Jungian mirror in motion. Because when we talk about relationships, we are not only talking about affection. We are talking about projections, wounds, emotional mirrors that come to shake everything that has not yet been healed within us. From the beginning, what Andres experienced with Lucia was more about himself than about her. Carl Jung taught us that what we project onto others, whether it's love, admiration, dependence, or pain, is an unconscious part of ourselves that we have yet to integrate. Andres didn't just fall in love with Lucia. He fell in love with his own shadow projected onto her. When Lucia tells him that what he sees in her is nothing more than his projection, she is making an unconscious act of love. She is giving him the first clue to begin his individuation journey. And it's important that our audience understands this. Not all connections are meant to stay. Some are meant to wake you up. Many ask, how do I know if someone is right for me? Deep psychology responds, observe what that relationship brings out in you. If it activates your dependence, your fear of abandonment, your need for approval, then you are not facing a story of destiny, but an old script your soul repeats to free itself. Andres starts healing, not when Lucia stays, but when she leaves. Why? Because, as he explained, the unconscious only becomes conscious when it stops satisfying our immediate need. The pain of separation was actually the beginning of his awakening. When Andres decides not to seek her out, he does not do it out of pride. He does it from the urgent need to find himself, and that is profoundly therapeutic. Many people seek answers in others without realizing that the other is merely the activator, not the solution. Here we see one of Jung's central concepts, the self. Not the ego, not the social mask, but that. An essential part that emerges when the individual has made contact with their shadow, their wound, their true desire. Andres doesn't stop loving. He begins to love in a different way, inwardly. Andres walks through Bogotá are not trivial. They are symbolic rituals of a soul that begins to inhabit its body. In Jungian psychology, external spaces reflect internal spaces. And when a person begins to find meaning in their surroundings, it is a sign that they have started to reconcile with their unconscious. The figure of the therapist, Manuel, also represents something deeper. He is not just a professional. He is the archetype of the guide, the wise one, the inner teacher, who appears when the disciple, Andres, is ready to see what they have never wanted to look at before. The dream of trains, elevators, and doors is extremely symbolic. In Jung, trains represent life paths, psychic journeys. Doors symbolize new thresholds of consciousness. The unconscious is speaking to him, and he is finally listening. A relationship, for Jung, is an archetypal channel for self-knowledge, and that is exactly what Lucia represents. She is not the woman of his life. She is the temporary personification of the anima, the feminine principle within every man, guiding his internal growth, the soul dressed as a person. When Andres sees her again and no longer trembles, when he no longer feels anxiety, when he can look at her without desperate longing, integration has occurred. The projection has disappeared, and in its place, there is the recognition of what was lived without attachment, without a desire to possess. From a therapeutic approach, this is true healing. It is not forgetting, it is acceptance. It is not disdain, it is transcendence. Andres does not deny what he felt. He honors it, but he no longer depends on it to feel complete. And that is the real closure, not the one given with words, but the one given with awareness. Erich Fromm said that love is not an easy feeling. It is a decision, a judgment, a promise. In the end, Andres does not choose the love that excites him. He chooses the love that builds, and he does so first with himself. This analysis leaves us with a truth. Not everything that shines is real love. Sometimes it is intensity. Sometimes it is emotional addiction. But true love is the one that allows both individuals to be more and more themselves. And that is what Jung called a conscious relationship. Many wonder if they should stay in a relationship that makes them doubt. Jung would respond with a question. Is this relationship bringing you closer to your truth, or is it pulling you further away from yourself? If it is the latter, it is not destiny. It is emotional distraction. The most beautiful moment of the story is not the reunion. It is when Andres writes in his journal, "I am learning to know myself. I am just beginning because there is everything." In that phrase, there is humility, there is process, there is truth. Jung would say that this is the first step toward individuation. When Andres transforms his pain into words, into a blog, into a message, he is doing the most powerful thing that a wounded soul can do. Share its light, not from perfection, but from authenticity. from what has been lived, from what has been learned. And from there, he becomes a symbol for others. Dear audience, maybe you too have had a Lucia. Maybe it still hurts. But the question you should ask yourself is not why she left. The question is, what part of you woke up thanks to that person? What did you start to see? What did she return to you that you had lost? And if that person came only to remind you of your worth, what if it wasn't about building a relationship, but about rebuilding yourself? Jung did not speak of happy endings. He spoke of complete processes. And sometimes the story is completed with a goodbye. This analysis is not meant for you to suffer. It is meant for you to understand, for you to take your story in your hands and stop giving your power to those who couldn't hold you. It is meant for you to transform your narrative. Because as Jung said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. And now, I want you to participate, to get involved in this process. If this story has made you reflect, if it has stirred something deep inside you, leave in the comments this phrase: I am ready to stop looking outside for what I can only find within. Write your truth, share your process. This channel is also your space for transformation. And if the love you are searching for outside is really a call from your soul to turn inward, and if that person you long for didn't come to complete you, but to awaken you, have you ever wondered if what you call love is really love, or just the fear of being with yourself? Think about it. How many times have you sought someone to look at you the way you are not looking at yourself? How many times have you confused company with salvation? Jung said that love is not about finding the other, but about finding yourself through the other. So I ask you, what part of you is urgently asking for attention while you insist the problem is the other? What would happen if instead of seeking a love that chooses you, you chose to stop abandoning yourself? What would happen if today, at this moment, you took a pause and said, enough, no more running away from myself, no more trying to fit in, no more chasing what doesn't resonate with my truth? Do you think it's possible to live a love without dependence? Do you think it's possible to love without disappearing into the other? Can you imagine a relationship where you can be free without fear, vulnerable without shame, authentic without punishment? Why have you believed that this is asking too much? Are you willing to stay with yourself long enough to get to know yourself before giving yourself away? Are you willing to stop running after someone who doesn't see you and start looking at yourself with new eyes, with love, without conditions, with the tenderness you've so often awaited from outside? Have you ever wondered where your loving choices come from? Are they a conscious decision or a disguised repetition? Does the person you desire so much really see you, or does it just validate a wounded part of you? Does it build you or erase you? If you had no fear today, who would you let go of? Who would you stop waiting for? What truth would you allow yourself to say? What kind of solitude would you open the door to, not as punishment, but as a teacher? And if your love story wasn't about finding someone, but about finding yourself, so that when that someone arrives, they don't have to rescue you, they don't have to complete you, but simply celebrate with you what you already are, how would your way of loving change? Don't you think the time has come to write a new narrative, one that doesn't come from need, but from choice? One where you no longer hide in fear of losing, but show yourself because you know your worth? Maybe destiny is not a person. Maybe destiny is you awakening. And from there, from that full truth, any love that arrives will be a reflection, not a refuge. It will be an expansion, not an excuse. It will be choice, not need. So, if this video has moved something inside you, if it has planted a powerful question, if it has been a light in the midst of your process, I invite you to leave in the comments this phrase: true love begins when I stop running away from myself. Write it with conviction. Write it as a declaration. Write it because you've understood that life is calling you to stop looking outside for what only blossoms inside. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for choosing this space to heal, grow, and reflect. Here at Psychologically Reflective, we don't just talk about love, we talk about consciousness. And from there, we can rebuild everything. See you in the next video, where we will continue touching the soul with words, truth, and love.